Siman Kuf Aleph, Arubis, Siman Kuf Aleph, Siv Vav, continuing with the topic of Chaticha Haruya Lischabed. Says the Mechaber in Sif Vav, Hadaberia, the Chaticha Haruya Lischabed, Lo Beteli, Dafka Ba'odim Shleimim. The halacha that Chaticha Haruya Lischabed is not bottle, the Chumrah of Chaticha Lischabed not bottle, and Beria, Dafka when these things are full. Avalam Nichtachu, if they were cut up, nisrasku, or they were chopped up. Ad shenevda tzurasan, to the point that they lose their tzura, then they're batli. The sula chashive, at that moment, they're no longer choshev. Ve'afilu im nisrasku la'acher shenisarbu im heter, even if they were chopped up after being mixed into the heter, and the Ramah throws in, if it is the Ramah, even after the guy knows about it. So in other words, even though we learned, we have chumras of chanan and other types of chumras of noida, so the chumras like that, still when it comes to chaticha harulis chabed and beria, despite the fact that 5 minutes ago I was not allowed to eat my whatever it is, that it was not being bottled, my cholent, now that it became all ground up, everything is bottled, assuming that I have the other parameters of whether it's Yomi bittul and tam and everything else, then everything is good to go. But mitzad the chumrah of chaticha lischabed, it's only when it's whole, and even if it gets chopped up after the fact. The Mechaber continues, this is only true if the guy did it or unintentionally, shall we say, levatal isser. If he unintentionally did it. If he intentionally chops it up, then if the item belongs to him, it's aser. If he did it for somebody else by his command, so then it becomes aser for that other person. This is the halach we learned earlier by Eim Vatanisha L'Chadchila. We mentioned also in those simanim that Eim Vatanisha L'Chadchila is also included in the case where the person is grinding it up in this here, not just he's being mevatel something and throwing isser into heter, he's activating a heter or a bittul that was not there until now. And Ramah concludes, "Ein chiluk beinis arbu b'minam o shelo b'minam." This is this chumrah of davar of chaticha lischabed and beri for that matter is true whether it's min b'minoi and min sheloi b'minoi. Ad kan the mechaber. Ad kan the Ramah. So let me just work backwards over here on that last point of the Ramah, and then we can go through some other comments. So this comment of the Ramah, it's true. That is the Ramah. That's Ramah Paskins. He points out the Taz and the Shach point out this is neged the Isser Beheter. The Isser Beheter was meko by min b'shelo b'minoi, and the reason the Isser Beheter was meko by min b'shelo b'minoi, we'll actually discuss it more in the next siman, or Yosef will discuss the next siman rather. So there is by davar sheish lo matirin, we are told explicitly that the chumrah davar sheish lo matirin is a case where you have isser that will become mutter later on, like chametz for Pesach is a davar sheish lo matirin, but it's not. That might be the reason why it's not batal, but it also has other reasons. But davar sheish lo matirin, the classic case from the Gemara is a case of a beitzah shenolda b'yamtiv, that is usher to eat b'tzad whatever halachas, whatever reasons are the Gemara beitzah discusses. And the beitzah now falls into other beitzim, and the Gemara calls it davar sheish lo matirin because you'll be able to eat the beitzah tomorrow. Davar sheish lo matirin. The davar sheish lo matirin is eino batal. The example the Gemara gives by beitzah is a case of min b'minoi. Eggs are falling in with their other eggs. But the question is, what about min b'she'enoi mino? So the Gemara writes, the Dharm, that min b'she'enoi mino is mutter on a davar sheish lo matirin. Why? Various explanations that we'll see next week, Mr. Shem. But whatever reason it is, the Isser Heter, well, he probably has a reason, says that kula is true by all the other things as well. Not only by davar sheish lo matirin that has the chumrah that ain't a batal, but the other things that are ain't a batal, like beria, chaticha lischabed, and he writes that this kula of min m'sheino mino carries over. That's the chiddush of the Isser Heter. The Ramah here argues, and in Torah's Chatos he speaks it out, and he writes that doesn't make sense because if you go back to the reason why davar sheish lo matirin is mutter by min b'sheino mino, that reason does not apply when it comes to beria and chaticha lischabed, and therefore the Ramah holds very stark that with machmir by all cases. And that's what the Taz brings down. But the Taz comments, he says, a cute comment of the Taz, he's not really sure why this comment of the Ramah ended up where it ended up. This doesn't sort of Shalom Kaimoi, and he says that probably it was a Torah Sofer, and this comment of the Ramah probably meant to be at the beginning of the Simon. Okay. Now working backwards at some other points here. So the Mechaber tells us this kula, that a chaticha l'schabed is eino batel only when he calls it shalem, but then he says if it's chopped up to the point of nevet zurasan, then it's mutter. Fine. What about somewhere in the middle? Let's say it was just chopped up a little bit. Yosef asked this question right before Shir. What would be the halacha on that? You have a chaticha l'schabed and it was cut up a little bit. So it seems to be, can't say exactly how this is going, but the Taz and the Marshal are clearly arguing on this case. The Taz brings down from the Marshal. The Marshal himself quotes from some story of the Chachmei Krakow. They're talking about some dish called a bilk. If anybody can help me with the bilk, I'd be appreciative. I tried Googling this one and I couldn't find it, sorry. But the bilk is some dish that comes from the goose. It's the basar on top of the chazeh. That's what the Marshal describes it as. Balik? In Yiddish, yeah? Balik is the white meat of the chest. Perfect. You just found it for us. You identified the dish. Wow, the balik. I was not pronouncing it correctly, but that's exactly how he describes it. Yeah. So, perfect. Wow. The balik. I'll Google that one afterwards. Yesterday we brought in Google if it was okay. I don't know. So, this piece that the Marshal admits is for sure chatichu l'schabed, whatever this dish is. But the issue is like this. He claims that the way the dish is normally served, it's never chatichu l'schabed because it's the lashon he has is that it's hufshat. Hufshat to me means it was skinned. I don't know what he means by that, but what he is saying is it had kama that it was cut up a little bit, so therefore it loses its chashivas. He writes, since the goose was flayed, the nito tifarta, it loses its glory, batu mena chashivas. V'kitzaz domu leberiya shenotu mena mat batu chashivusa. V'chein kan batu chashivusa ma'achar de kishlo haisa mufshatas haisa chashuva b'yoser. So the Marshal says, since it used to be more chashuv, and now that he calls it hufshat, I don't know what the metzias of hufshat is.
The skin of the goose is so fatty that
Could be. Oh, very good. So the Marshal says, and therefore it's batu chashivusa. Now, comes on the Taz and he says, I get it, that he admits he's also very into also the culture, and he admits that, yeah, for sure, when it was hufshat, it's batul, it loses some of its tifarta, it's not as chashuv, but he says, it's not a relative thing. Oh, it's not as chashuv, and therefore it's not chashuv. You could be, everybody's chashuv, right? You have a lot of, you can have this chashuv, and he's more chashuv, they're all chashuv. Doesn't matter that it was more chashuv, says the Taz, as long as it is still ru'uya l'schabed, even though it was kilu more chashuv a minute ago, it doesn't make it lose its chashivas, and therefore the Taz is machmir in all these cases, and he has very extreme words. He says the tamani im yotzet dvarim elu pi Marshal. He writes that it would be surprising if the Marshal really said this. Shema'od temumhem v'chi b'chaticha gedola v'chashuva ma'od v'nechtach men ketzas namar shebat l'chashivusa. So Amina b'siv shachar zed the low batul chashivus mikoch nisrasik overnechtach ad shenevdet zurasa. And the Taz even writes further that in the Mechaber is very clear that it doesn't lose its chashivus until it's of the zurasa, until that point it's still considered chashiv. Now he does admit when it comes to beria, he's like nechanami. By beria you're right. By beria it's when it's shalim, but that's beria because beria is all about being shalim. Chatichu l'schabed is all about being mischabed lifnei orchim, and at kama you could still mischabed lifnei orchim. Therefore, we are machmir on a chatichu l'schabed. Okay. Another minor point before the next sif. The Kiva Eger is really on the next sif, but he brings down an interesting case. He says if you have an iser d'Rabbanan that is a chaticha ru'li l'schabed and it fell into the pot, so are you allowed to chop that up? Well, we just learned you can't chop it up, right? But the Kiva reminds us, at least the Mechaber, we don't, the Bnei Ashkenaz, okay, we have Sardim, right? But the Bnei Ashkenaz are machmir by Vatanis Echadchila, Bain Bito Biadayim, Bain Riba. But if we recall, the Mechaber was Mekel by, in the case of Isid Rabbanon, of Riba. In the case that we had earlier, you have an Issa Rabbanon that falls into your soup pot, and you only have 59 kazesim keneged your Isser. And it's an Issa Rabbanon that fell in. The Mechaber was makel to throw in more heter into the soup pot to mevatel the Isser. Similarly, says Rikiv Eger in our simon, if you have a beria that falls into your soup pot, so then you'd be allowed to nisrasik it biyadayim if it was an Issa Rabbanon, lefi the Mechaber, and lefi the Sfardim Pascal the Mechaber. Presumably, this would be a nice kula. You have to check it with your local posek to make sure that this can carry over halach lemaisa. Siv Zayin. Im nechtecha chaticha achas, ein tolen lomar, shel iser nechtach umizbatel, yukulan mutaris, el oisa shenechtecha belvad mutaris, mimonavshach. Im hi shel iser av kulan mutaris, im ena shel iser harehi mutaris. Ve'afilu nechtechu ruban, ein tolen lomar, she'iser mi'arov, shenechtechu el kol hachatichos mutaris v'ashlemos asuros. Mechaber talks about the following case. So you have a neftecha chaticha achacha. So you have let's make it simple for ourselves. We have in front of us 59 pieces of steak, of 60 pieces of steak, of heter steak. And the vela steak falls in. So now, mitzad tam, it's bottle. That we're good with. Yavish b'yavish, lach b'lach, we're good on that. What we don't have right now is we have the problem of chatichu l'schabed, it's a bottle. One of the steaks was completely chopped up, pulverized. Again, let's do it for shogeg. Nobody did this intentionally. And now the question is, which one was chopped up? Was it the one that was isser, the one that was mutter? So you'd say, let's be makel, subject to Rabbanan, subject to Rabbanan l'kula. Let's be tola, and to say that the one that was chopped up was the isser one that was chopped up. And now that it was chopped, now the isser one was chopped up. So it goes back into the previous sif when it was nechtach, misraseg, balto chashivas. So therefore, it's no longer chaticha or lischabed, and therefore it's mutter. No, you don't say that. Ein tolen lomar shel iser nechtach umisbato. You can't do that. You can't be tola that the one that was chopped up was the iser, v'yukula mutaros, and effectively being able to matter the rest of the pot. Elo oisa shenechtach bilvad mutaros. Ein achanami, the one that was chopped up. So if you have all your steaks over here, and one of them was chopped up, or two of them was chopped up, and you have some chopped up meat, again, only b'diavad, only if it was chopped up accidentally. If it was now chopped up, you'd be able to eat the chopped up one. B'manashach. If this chopped up meat was the isser, so it's no longer considered a chaticha or lischabed, and everything is mutter, theoretically. If this was the heter one, well, it's mutter.
No, but this doesn't come heter when
Isser, no, but it's saying it was.
it's built on saying if this is the piece that's isser, so now everything becomes bottle, but not the piece that's also that doesn't become bottle. You don't know which one it is. Yeah, but the whole side that you're saying is if this is the piece that's usher. Okay, so it's still usher. You don't have a monarch. No, it's not. If you could know that this is the one that's usher, it's not bottle.
That's a good question. So what does it mean, monoshach? That's a good question. Imi shel israv kulam mutaros. Imeno shel israv rehim mutaros. But on the other hand, yes and no, because right, it's a tricky question. But you would admit, though, that you'd be allowed to eat the whole pot. Even if you knew, if let's say you knew for sure it was aser, what would be the halacha? No, you'd be allowed to eat everything, though.
If this one is chopped up, and it's also allowed to be able to eat all the mutter ones.
Right.
But not the aser one. If you knew that this is the aser one.
Yeah, it's a good question, a very good question. I don't have a clear answer. It's a bam kasha. Wow. Okay, I don't have the answer. That's a very good question. Even if you had, whatever, in our example, it's 60 good steaks and one bad steak, and now 60 of them got chopped up, and only one of them remained non-chopped up. So you say, come on, guys, my Isser was definitely the one that was chopped up. Afal Pikain, we are machmir to not be toilet. Now to Pella, because this is an Issa D'Rabbanan, meaning the whole chumrah of chatichu lischabed is an Issa D'Rabbanan. So why are we so machmir here? The Taz gets into this. The Taz writes as follows. He says that you would have been tempted to say that really this is the classic halacha of kavua, kol kavua kemechsa mechsa dami, which means that when a classic case of teisha chanios, you have 9 stores on the street, And if a piece of meat falls out of the stores that are on the street, and you don't know if it came from the kosher or the non-kosher store, you're allowed to go based on Rove to say it came from the kosher store. However, if you walk into the store and you buy a piece of meat and you don't know which store you went into, so then the halacha is kol kavua k'mechsa mechsa dami. Since the Isser and the Heter are kavua there, in the place that it is, you cannot be makel on Rove. So the Taz begins by saying maybe we would, base it off that halacha. He says that's not true, and explains why. But he says as follows. He brings it down from the Trumas Hadeshen. He writes that it's a very interesting concept. He says this is actually based on Rove backwards. Why? Because what's happening here? We have 60 pieces of good meat and one piece of bad meat, right? Now, one of them was chopped up. He says once the one that was chopped up, he says that's considered parish, meaning it was like separated. It was removed from the other ones. That's effectively considered parish. So what do we say? Called the parish, ruba parish. Okay, well, what's the ruba? The ruba is heter. So called the parish, ruba parish tells you that the one that was removed from the rest of the pot was the heter, and therefore we say that the heter one was chopped up. So here Rove is working against us to be machmir. Even though you say, oh, it's the Rabban and all that, but it says the Taz, it's really because you have a Rove. The Rove is saying that the one that was chopped up was the heter, and therefore we have to be machmir. Adkan the Taz. Okay, next halacha.
You have to be machmir because now you don't have enough heter.
You have to be machmir because the Isser is still chatichu l'schabed. So therefore, everything is aser. That's why. The only thing is, we're trying to figure out did it lose its chashivas?
So, maybe that should be the halacha in all cases.
What do you mean?
So you have
Okay, fine. Sivches korkaban shenimsa nakuv. Okay, so you have all your chickens and you took out, you chefed a lot of chickens, and later on in the day you found out, you took out the gizzards of all the chickens, you found one of your korkabans has is nakuv. So oigaval. So that means you guys learned trefus. I didn't learn this with you, but the korban shnim said nakuv and arva oisa tarnagolis macheres. The problem is the chickens are already mixed up. You already chefed 20, 30, 100 chickens throughout the day, and now you have on the side over here your pile of korkabans. So you're checking the korkabans, and you found one of the korkabans is nakuv, which means that one of your chickens is now treif. So this is really bad, because now you mixed in all your chickens into this pile, and now what happens? So medamin. Now it's interesting. We did learn yesterday that you'd say like, wait, hold on a second, just go batal barov, batal b'shishim, right? All that. So this is chatichu l'schabi. The mechaber is not stating that clearly, but he's obviously assuming that in context of this. Of the siman. This is meaning this didn't have to be a case of chatichu l'schabed, but it makes the case a little more realistic because I'm assuming in the shechting house they have a lot of chickens, right? So you end up a big pile of chickens. So if all these chickens, you say, okay, so I have one chicken, that's treif, whatever, it's batal, right? But it can't be. It's chatichu l'schabed.
Only according to the sugya that before it's cooked, it will be cooked.
So I was going to point out, right? So this is based on the machlokas, the mechaber, and the Ramah, really. So the mechaber was super machmir by the case of the parameters of chatichu l'schabed. If you have an example of something that right now is not ru'il l'schabed, but will become ru'il l'schabed later on, so is that considered a ru'il l'schabed? So the mechaber initially brought down the opinions to be mekel. He then brought down the yesh cholkin. We said it wasn't clear on whether he's really being mekel or machmir, but the examples that he gave were the examples no tzatza, where the chicken was with its feathers. That's our example here. The chicken is with its feathers. Unless maybe it's talking after the feathers.
It's certainly not cooked.
Certainly not cooked, right? Certainly not cooked. So, and yet the mechaber brought down yesh cholkin. He initially said the hakel. The fact that he's bringing down over here, my guess is that he's referring to this as a chatichu l'schabed, and therefore he was noited lahachmir on that shaila. The Ramah was very clear in his psak, and he wrote that it depends on whether it requires a tikkun gadol. If you have a chicken that needs a tikkun gadol, you have to remove the feathers. So then that's not considered chatichu l'schabed. But if you already remove the feathers and all you need to do now is cook it, so says the Ramah, being that it's not a major tikkun to get it to the point of being Ruy l'schabed, right now it's considered a chatich ruy l'schabed, and therefore, if this case was a case that I'm thinking of, where it's just you're in the shechting house, so then anyways the Rama will be mekel mitzad the halachas of stam bittul, and it's not considered chatich ruy l'schabed. In any event, it's still relevant, this halacha, in a case where you don't have shishim. So, anyways, the korban shenimsa naku v'nis arba oisatar negos mecheres. Here's the point here. Medamin shuman shebekorkaban leshuman shetanagailis shel makom chibor hakorkaban im domin legamrei machshirin ha'acherois. What you do is you're allowed to match things up. You're allowed to play games over here and say, hey, who's the owner of this korkaban here? And you pull out all the chickens, and you can actually start matching things up. So it gets a lot of fun. Get the kids involved. So if you can match up your korkaban with your chicken, so now you can find the chicken that is treif, you throw them out, and everybody else is mutter. Very interesting over here. Okay, next halacha. It's very, very similar. I should mention this halacha of the korkaban. We said yesterday the Marshal brought down that the korkaban is considered a chaticha u'lischabed, and so the Shach says, who said so, and he says that he thinks what confused some people was this halacha, because this halacha is referring to chaticha u'lischabed, but as we see, it's not that the korban is chaticha u'lischabed, the chicken is chaticha u'lischabed, right? The korban was just used as the similar davar that the chicken was treif. The Shach points it out yesterday. Rosh keves, the head of a sheep. Shenimsa treifa v'loy noida me'eza kevesu v'hekifu harosh l'tzavara shel echad mi'akvasim v'nimsu hachatichos doimos v'chuvanos yoife yeshismo chazel hatir acheros. So you have the head of a sheep, the same thing that we found. It was a treifa. Now you got to find the missing sheep head, the sheep without a head. Before you had a chicken without a gizzard, usually a chicken without a head. So you have a chicken without a gizzard and you have a sheep without a head. You have to match them up. Now it's interesting. The lashon of the mechaber is they're daimais u'mechuvanos yafe. What do those two words mean? Daimais u'mechuvanos yafe. They sound repetitive. So the Taz says they're not repetitive. He writes, look at the Taz in Sif as well. Mashma b'mare gamkein yuhu shavos ve'afagad degabe shuman hakorban sagi b'mare hashuman lechud hachashayni kevan she'efshar levarure gamkein al yedei shu mechuvanim yafe. Okay, this is a very, very fundamental halacha in Yoreh. What's he saying? He points out that when it comes to the chicken and the gizzard case, the mechaber was makel to work with color alone. And if you notice that the korkavan, looks like the chicken, so you can makel. It's not about matching up the size. No. Yeah, he doesn't mean that it fits in like a Lego. He means that the color is the same. Medam and shuman shebekorban leshuman shemer tanagol shemokom chibor hakorban vim dom legamrei. You're comparing the color, yeah. So he says the Taz that when it comes to korban, it's about the color, and that's it. He says when it comes to the keves, also the same thing. You take the head of the keves, head of the thing, and you look at them. You're like, oh wow, they look, they're the same color, and they can be makel. So no, but Apple Pikein, the Mechaber says that's mechuvanos yafe, and here you got to fit it in. So you have to look at the head of the sheep, and you have to put the head back on the sheep, right? And you have to see if it matches. If it doesn't match, it's not the right one. But the same color, and I went through all of them, and this guy doesn't match with anything. So the Taz says you have to be machmir. Now, what's the reason for this? So the reason is, he says she'efshar levarure, and I think what he's trying to say is this is a very, very, it comes up all the time in Yoreh, that as long as you can mevarer something, we expect you to mevarer it. So he said, but I was mevarer it, but it was more to mevarer. And this is a very interesting taz, because I was mevarer with one siman, but at kama I'm able to mevarer with another siman, you have to mevarer with the other siman as well. So that's the taz. Now in halach lemaisa he writes, so this thing is out of commission. We're no longer using this kula, because the poskim say that we lost our bekiyas in this. I never had the bekiyas, I never lost it. But we all lost the bekiyas, and therefore we can't use the kula of mechuvanos.
By korban also?
By korban also, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Unless you want to start. You want me to push me to quick phase? Okay.